Greetings, friends. Welcome to the Grit and Equity Talks podcast with yours truly, Dr. India White. No, I can't. Oh my God, I forgot to change my screen. Okay. I have a lot to edit. Let's try it again. All right. Tall. All right, okay. I'm ready to roll now. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the Grit and Equity Talks podcast with yours truly, Dr. India White. I'm thrilled to be here with you guys today. Before I get into the show, I have a wonderful guest who is an educator, is going to do so many things, and we're going to talk about education. So teachers and principals, get ready for a great show. Now, as I told you before with our announcements, the Grit and Equity Talks podcast with Dr. India White will be featured on the X Factor EDU network, which is hosted by Dr. Matthew Joseph, with so many other great podcasts on that platform. You need to go check them out as well as check out this episode. This will also be aired on Spotify, so you can find it in both areas. And you can find it on all of my main social media platforms as well. Speaking of my social media platforms, you can find me on Facebook at Miss India White. LinkedIn is The India White. Twitter is Indy Speak and Teach. Instagram is Indy238. YouTube is India White 123. And TikTok is Dr. India White. I would love for you guys to also get a moment to check out the website at www.india-white.com for my books, blogs, or to schedule me for any upcoming events that you might have. I want to thank also NCTM for the opportunity to be published in their journal article, this month's article feature, and it was titled Developing Grit in the Math Classroom. I want to thank everyone all year that has either featured me in some type of magazine or article or blog. And the guest that I'm bringing on also does work like that too. So I just want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. And with that said, I was talking about events. So I do want to bring up a really cool event, the Getting Gritty for the New Year's Women Empowerment Conference. For you ladies out there in education or just in general, and you're wanting to join us to talk about women empowerment and how we can kick off the new year, we're going to have a blast. I'm honored to be the keynote, but we have a panel discussion of so many experts in their own right. We also have success stories. We have a vision board and so many other things that we're going to be doing as we are getting gritty for the new year. You will be able to utilize the Grit calendar, which will be the first time that you guys will be launching the Grit calendar. So I'm super excited about that. Also, if you're wanting more about Grit, please check out the Grit mini workshop on the Grassroots Workshops website. You can find so many different workshops on that platform, but the Grit one is there too. So please check it out when you get a chance. Now, this platform is if you are trying to close the achievement gap, but you're having classroom management issues, or if your students just aren't motivated to do work, then you can join me and our guests on the Grit and Equity Talks podcast. So with that said, I'm now honored to bring on to the Grit and Equity Talks podcast a wonderful expert in their own right, someone who has been in the education space, helping so many educators. He teaches educators. He writes blogs on topics that matter. He actually wrote a blog on myself and on Grit, and I'm so honored for that. With that said, I want to introduce you guys an educator, a blogger, an expert in their own right, and that is going to be Mitch Weisburgh. How are you, Mitch?
Hi. Good, India. How are you?
Great. Thank you so much for joining us on the Grit and Equity Talks podcast.
Thank you. So even before we get started, so you mentioned something in your intro that kind of hit me. So what is the Grit calendar?
Yes. So the Grit calendar is it's a feature that I have recently launched, and I'm super excited about it. And it is a yearly calendar that speaks to grit every single day. And in this Grit calendar, you will find my framework, and you'll find how you can organize your own life using my framework every single day. And you'll have Grit weeks where you can focus on a particular part of the framework each day of the week. And you actually are setting goals for yourself and looking back to see how far you've achieved those goals, how far you've come, and what you need to do for the future. So some of the tiers of my framework, of course, are growth mindset, resilience, self-efficacy, and time management. So that is going to be embedded throughout every single day of the year for you in the Grit calendar. And so,
wow, what a great idea.
Thank you. I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, you should be. You should be. I think that's going to be incredibly helpful. Yeah, and I guess you have a link to the grit calendar, so if people wanted to order
Yes,
one.
I do.
That's
Yes,
great.
I do. And you can find it on my website already. And it's already been discounted and everything for you guys so that you can just go ahead and pick up one and go ahead and start planning your new year. But for the ladies that are in my session, we're going to have a downloadable copy of the grit calendar so that they can work on it right there and see it. And then they can grab the copies that they need for their business, their women, or themselves, and they can start planning their new year. So I'm super excited. But you as well, you can go and find it on the website. So it's open to everyone.
Okay, good. No, it just hit me like, wow, this sounds really interesting, and I had to ask for it. And I'm sorry I deflected you from wherever you were going to talk about next,
No, you're
but
fine.
it just seemed to be really interesting.
I'm super excited. It's like my new baby. It's a new launch. It's for business owners. It's for doctors, lawyers, for anyone that has a pulse that is trying to be gritty. This grit calendar is for you. So thank you so much for shining a light on that because I'm just so thrilled about it. So listen, I want you, Mitch, to tell us a little bit about yourself.
So what I primarily do is I teach educators about mindsets and about switching from mindsets that hold us back to mindsets that allow us to be more resourceful, to have more grit, to be able to critically think better, be able to innovate, to be able to collaborate. And my ultimate goal is if we got 5 million people who learned how to really control their minds so that they could always be in a resourceful state, we could really change the world. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not going to reach 5 million people, okay? But if 5 million people got these techniques, then we really could change the whole tilt so that we're not battling all these issues that we're just fighting each other about. We're living happier lives. We're feeling we're making a difference. And one of the ways that I'm looking for that to happen is through the courses where I'm teaching educators. And
Yes.
so I teach. I just published a book called "Stop Your Brain from Sabotaging Your Happiness and Success," and the book is for educators. Also, the book is more general, so it deals with a lot of life situations, not just educational situations. And the courses where I teach, they're live courses, and those courses are really focused on educators, the things that we do in the classroom, the things that we do in schools, the way we interact with kids, in addition to just our normal events, because we're all people. So
Right.
many of us have kids, we're in relationships, we have spouses or significant others, we have parents and friends and peers, and we're working with other people, and we get stuck in situations very often, or we see, how could they possibly be thinking this? It's the information is right in front of them. And so the courses are, how do you deal with that? How do you understand where they're coming from? How do you understand where you're coming from? How do you get yourself into a more resourceful state? And then how do you work with others?
Now, this is beautiful. Thank you for having a heart in doing this. And for all of you principals out there and educators listening, please know that Mitch is a resource that you can use in your school districts. Mitch, what got you into this work? What cultivated your grit to say, this is my purpose, this is what I want to do? What was it? What happened?
So the world moves, or the universe moves in mysterious ways, right? So for 15 years or so, I was advising education publishers on education technology in various fashions, and I'd gotten somewhat of a good reputation. And so once a year, I was asked by a combination of UPenn and Wharton School of Business to do a half day workshop for people who were joint in the education program and in the business school program on education technology. And because of that, I got on their mailing list, and they sent out a mailing in around 2017 saying that there was a university in Niger, not Nigeria, Niger, that wanted US based EdTech entrepreneurs to talk to their undergraduates about EdTech and education. And I had two responses to that. One response was, why would those undergraduates benefit at all from a U.S. person talking about education technology in the U.S. because our education systems are going to be very different. What we use is going to be very different from what is
Yeah.
best used in a different country. The national language in Niger is French, so most of the
Yeah.
stuff that we were going to be talking about was going to be in English. So that was thought number one. And then I don't know, I had just become really upset at the way people weren't working together to solve issues, and how many, and you notice how many people were really upset with their lives, and weren't weren't being successful, didn't feel like they were successful, felt that they were hitting obstacles. And so on a whim, my email back was, I really don't think that having an ed tech entrepreneur talk to your undergraduates is going to really help them, but if you'd like, I can do a workshop for them on how successful people make sense of the world and how they use techniques in order to focus their minds on what they needed to do in order to achieve their goals. And I called that at the time sense making. And then they got back to me and we talked, and we agreed in June of 2017 that in February of 2018 I would teach two-day workshops, each to 60 to 70 undergraduates. And we shook hands, and I was going to go to Niamey, Niger, in order to teach that. And then all of a sudden it's like, Mitch, you idiot, you've done it again. You have no idea how to do this. But you got 6 months. So I read 11 books on a variety of subjects on how people make decisions. Economics is really about decisions, psychology, military strategy, cognitive development, learning, sales, management. So all these different subjects. And what I noticed is that each had a slice on how we make sense of the world and how successful people do it differently from people who aren't feeling successful. And what I did, I pulled information from each one of these and put them into this 2-day workshop. Flew to Niger in February. And the first workshop, as I said, had 65 kids. I'm going to call them kids. They're 18 to 25 years old. And at the end of the 2-day worksheet, at the end of the 2-day workshop, they stood and cheered.
Oh.
And it's like, oh my gosh, this is really hitting a nerve, because we don't teach these things in schools. Okay. We teach history and we teach science, maybe we teach STEM, but how the brain really works, how the brain misleads us into doing things that are counterproductive, how that works with other people, how to turn conflicts into collaboration, how just because we think something is true doesn't make it true, and how to realize we're in those situations and turn it around. Those are all things that we all should know how to do, but nobody teaches this. And so since then, it's like, well, how do I then expand this? How do I reach more people? And that became my life mission. I really no longer, if an education publisher, an ed tech company calls me and wants some advice, I'm happy to sit down with them and talk to them for half an hour or an hour or follow up with them. But that's not my life anymore. My life is, how do I get it so that more people really understand how to stay in resourceful, resilient mode. And obviously grit is a big part of that, right?
Yeah, you were saying resilience, and that just perks in my ears, like grit.
Yeah, exactly.
So it is, you're teaching people how to be gritty and, with the mindset. And so many people have been writing books on mindset. We have some experts in the math space as well that have written on mindset. And so my question to you then is, like, for those people, like, so I have a couple things that I offer. Like, I talk about grit weeks, how you should have a grit week, growth mindset Monday. And this is what we talk about in the grit calendar and stuff. Resilience Tuesdays, self-efficacy Wednesdays, time management Thursdays, things like that. How can people successfully have mindset shifts while, like, manifesting a grit week, for instance? Like, what advice do you have for them? Like, what are the foundational tools that they're going to need, or strategies to keep them focused and to have them produce, to see results as they're being gritty and resilient, as you're talking about with mindset?
So, so that's a great question, and I wish I had like a really quick answer, but I have like four different answers.
Yeah, go
Right.
for it.
So in one respect, um, we start off certainly in the book, and very quickly get into this in the course is that our you can think of our brains as really having two parts. There's the parts of our brain that evolved from the earliest times that multi-celled creatures moved. And so I call that, or many people call that, the survival part of the brain. And
Mm,
that evolved for millions of years. And the purpose of that part of the brain is to keep us alive, so that we can basically reproduce, right? And survival of the species. And so that part of the brain, the number one thing that it's looking at, in addition to eating, okay, is what's a threat and how do I quickly react to minimize that threat?
mm,
And the three most common ways once you see a threat are to fight, or to run away, to flee, or to freeze. And so those are our three really defensive reactions. And the other part of the brain that we think of as kind of the human part of the brain, which has the grit and perseverance, which has the ability to collaborate, um, developed much later and is mostly developed in humans. And I would say the prefrontal cortex part of the brain. And that's the part that thinks critically, that thinks creatively, that collaborates, that has
mhm,
executive function. And one of the issues is that the survival parts of the brain activate about 100 times faster than the resourceful parts of the brain. So you have the survival part of the
oh,
brain that is
wow.
reacting in like 2/100ths of a second. And
Oh,
since it's primed to look for dangers, and it's binary, okay, it's looking as many things as possible as where's a danger and how do I protect myself. Once that's perceived that there's a danger, it then secretes fear hormones, adrenaline and cortisol, which essentially shut down the ability of the prefrontal cortex, so that the entire organism is focused on whatever the danger is. Now, if you're being threatened with something that could kill you, that's
mhm,
really, really important. But if you're being threatened with something that might inconvenience you, or that you might not succeed at the first time you try it, or that you might be embarrassed, but temporarily because you don't do it perfectly, those aren't real dangers. Okay. And as a matter of fact, if you really think about it, every time you're growing, you're facing those and you're overcoming those. But left to its own devices, that survival brain says, oh my gosh, you might not succeed at this. This is a danger. Let's shut down your prefrontal cortex and let's just focus you on fighting or fleeing or freezing. And
oh,
so
wow.
a good part of the course is understanding how those two parts of the brain interact, and then how do you shut down those survival instincts and calm them down, getting, reducing the amount of cortisol and adrenaline, so that then your survival part of the brain secretes the happy hormones like serotonin and dopamine, um, oxytocin, which then excite your prefrontal cortex so that you can have advanced executive function. You can be creative. You can collaborate. You can think critically. So a good part of the course is to understand how the brain works, and then once you understand how the brain works, then we go into specific techniques that you can use and why those techniques work. Um, and my guess is that a lot of those techniques are similar to the techniques that you use in Grit Week and in your Grit. One of my favorites is something created by coined by somebody named David Goggins. Okay, so do you know him or have you heard of him?
No, I don't
Okay,
think I have.
so he's the I don't he's the only person who has ever gone through all the different advanced fighting forces in the U.S. Armed Forces. the Army one, the Navy one, the Marine one. He's the only person at the time, and I think
Wow.
still, who's been through all of them. And when he was 27, he was an overweight, alcohol fused, deadbeat dad, and turned his life around. Okay. And he coined
Wow.
something called the emotional cookie jar. And that emotional cookie jar is to think about, is to, first of all, come up with a list of 10 times in your life where you thought you weren't going to succeed and you persisted and you did it anyhow.
Woo.
And it's hard to do that with coming up with 10, but he has you first come up with 5, and then once you've come up with 5, it's like, okay, now go back and think, even when you were a child, were there times where you thought you were going to flunk a course, or that you weren't going to succeed in some sport, or that you were having a problem with another kid, that you were able to succeed anyhow, and then come up with 3 more, and then come up with 2 more. So you end up somewhere with a list of 5 to 10 people. Now, when you as a person look at those successes, that then gives you an impetus for the next time that you feel that you're not going to succeed. And so you look at and you say, oh my gosh, something, I thought I wasn't going to graduate from high school. I thought I was going to flunk college. I thought I was never going to be a good artist. I never thought I would be popular. All these things that you look back and say, and I could have stopped at any one of those and I succeeded. So I've faced hard things before, and I've succeeded. And that means I can do it again. This is just another time, and it's an opportunity for me to grow.
This is beautiful.
Isn't it fantastic?
I just there's so much synergy and electricity going off here. My mind is blown, because that's exactly what a grit week looks like. Like, and so now I want to kind of like sync this and say, what parts of the brain are being used as people are maybe going through a grit week, or they're doing their best to not only say, I didn't fail, I thought I was going to fail, but now I believe in myself, which of course is self-efficacy, right?
Yep.
And I'm achieving my goal, right? Which also coins to the time management part. But I want to now also put a spin on it. So I wanted to talk about what parts of the brain are working when that's happening, but then how does that look in a grit week? And let's go now to you with your book on how do you stop your brain from sabotaging success once you have fulfilled maybe a successful grit week, or you've accomplished that goal, and then you're like, wait, this is too good to be true. Let me push back, whatever. Talk to us, please, and spill the beans for us.
So the first thing is to kind of understand when you're in the mode where your own brain is holding you back. And so that's whether you call it self-awareness, whether you call that metacognition, whatever the term you want to use about it. It's the first thing is to become aware of it. Once you're aware of it, in general, there are 3 techniques that you can use to quiet that part of the brain, and then you can tap into your resourceful part of the brain. So one of the techniques is just the self-awareness themselves. Sometimes you're in the middle of this horrible self-talk. It's like, Mitch, you're an idiot. How could you be doing this? You'll never succeed. And say, wait a minute. That's just my saboteur parts of the brain trying to make me miserable. And sometimes that's just enough. Once you realize that it's like, something, just be quiet over there and let me concentrate on what I need to do. And, so sometimes that's enough. Sometimes it's through some positive self-talk. Like the positive self-talk might be, let me take a look at some of the things that I've succeeded in the past, and this shows that I can succeed again. Or this is just a feeling that I get whenever I'm trying something new, and it's a sign that I'm growing. So it's not a sign that I should stop. It's a sign that I'm growing. And so there's probably, probably thousands of different things that you can say to yourself in positive self-talk. And sometimes you have to actually spend time and quiet that part of the brain through something like, meditation or mindfulness, or just going for a walk, some type of distraction, doing something that you love, like maybe, art, or dance or listening to music, but being some type of mindfulness so that your brain is not focused on what's causing you this pain or this anxiety. Your brain has a chance to relax, and then you can use the self-awareness and or you can use the self-talk, um, to then start moving yourself over um, to focus on the powers of the resilience part of the brain. And and those powers are things like connecting with others, empathy. If I were going to be empathetic towards myself here, because you can be empathetic towards yourself or another person, how, if I really embodied empathy for myself, how would I react in this case? Or
Wow.
if I really wanted to be playful and exploratory, how would I be looking at this problem right now? That's another power of
Yeah.
the resilient mind. Or what's really really important to me right now, because very often we get involved in these arguments with ourselves or with other people, and if we really took a step back, it's like, something, this really isn't important. And so thinking about what's really important, what I really want to do is I really want to change the world, or what I really want to do is I
Wow.
really want to get a degree. And this argument that I'm having about with this other person about what's right in homework, whoever wins that argument isn't going to affect whether I'm going to get a degree or not. Let me just put
Yeah.
the argument aside and focus on what's really important. So it's A, self-awareness, B, being able to quiet your mind through some combination of self-awareness, self-talk, or distraction or mindfulness. And third, then it's tapping into your higher level functions of empathy, innovation, exploration, or focused action.
Wow. I'm going to write these um, for people that are listening because I want them to be able to see this.
Right. So there's five, and I probably missed one of them.
Yeah.
But
Well,
there's
I have these three
okay.
in general.
Which do you have?
One, right?
Mm-hmm.
So self-awareness, and then empathy, like, or quieting your mind, and then taking some type of focused action to kind of cultivate that resilience.
Okay, right. Okay, so yes, it's those three steps, and then in the taking of the focused action, there are five powers of the
Okay.
resourceful mind,
What
and
are those
those
powers?
five powers, and now of course we're talking, and I've forgotten them, but empathy is one, and empathy could be towards yourself or empathy towards another person. Um, Exploration, going into something with a sense of curiosity and
Yeah.
not being tied to result, but just curiosity and play. Third is innovation, and innovation is not primarily about you coming up with what's innovative, but it's about you tapping into other people also.
Yeah.
So very often, we get into these, what should we do? We could do this. And somebody says, well, I think we should do this. And then you say, well, I think we should do this. And you're not tapping into each other. So there's techniques to, if I really want to be innovative with other people, how would I allow all of us to contribute to something that's better than any one of us could have
Right.
come up with? So there's innovation. Then there's, our highest level values, tapping into what's really, really important to us. And then the final one is on focused action. And the difference between action and focused action is that in focused action, we're aware that the first thing that we do is in all likelihood not going to fully succeed in whatever our goal is. And so we're prepared that we're going to do something, we're going to get some results and feedback from whatever we do, and then we're going to take that in order to change, in order to get better or to learn something, so that we can then come back and try it again. So that's where the grit comes in, because you're steeling yourself to the fact that you're going to try something. If it doesn't work, that doesn't mean you failed at all. You're not expecting it to work. You're expecting to get some results.
Yeah.
So that you can use those results to continue to move forward.
This is excellent, and I love it because, like, just in the center of this is hope. It's a hope,
right.
It's a hope that life will get better. You will succeed. You will continue to grow, and you can't win on a wheel of hope, like a gritty wheel of hope. You cannot lose. I mean, like, you have to win. whether winning means that you're having an experience,
Hmm.
you learned something, or winning means you strengthen the skill set, you strengthen the character trait of grit. But at the end of it, it's hope. You have to win.
You
And
have
so
to.
I think this is great for those people that might want to, hit rock bottom and they're just feeling like they're at a low and they're just not really seeing, maybe even educators, they're just hopeless. Some of us are in these seats and they are hopeless.
Mhm.
So, what words do you have for them? What words of encouragement do you have to somebody that's maybe looking down a dark tunnel and they're just not sure, of the next steps and what to do?
Well, so I actually, so let me get to that in a second, because as you were talking, I was also thinking, to a certain extent, people listening are thinking, well, this may apply to my own life, and it absolutely does. Could you imagine if we got the next generation, the kids that we're teaching, if we folded this into the way we taught them, so that they could that initially we could co-regulate them and remind them, hey, wait a minute, is that your limbic mind operating, or are you actually in your prefrontal cortex right now? Okay.
Wow.
Okay.
That's
So
amazing.
they would be able to take much more charge of their own success, including their education, but their whole life success. And
Yeah.
so that's part of my mission.
Wow.
And then as you said, what about a person who's down? You're down because you have this it depends on who the expert is. One group of experts call it, you have this saboteur part of your mind,
Uh-huh.
and another group calls it the part X part of your mind. So the whole purpose of this part X part of your mind is to keep you safe by having you not change anything.
Mm.
And the idea of being self-aware and then self-correcting is the idea that, okay, you can be aware that, hey, wait a minute, this is just my part X trying to keep me safe by not changing, but by trying to keep me safe, it's also preventing me from growing and doing the things I want to. And I have three ways of quieting it down. One is maybe just by being self-aware.
Oh, wow.
That's enough. Maybe by doing some positive self-talk, or by asking myself some questions, I can do it. Or maybe I just have to sit down for 15 minutes and focus on my breathing or some artwork, so that
Wow.
it calms down, so that I can then focus on what I want to
Oh
do.
my gosh. See, this is the power of this is needed for the growth of a community. And I think that, we talk about character education, socio-emotional learning, which, in certain parts of the nation is, praised more than others. But this is a very important trait, especially for people that are dealing with hardships and real,
Right.
real tragedies in life. And the thing I love that really struck me recently was when you talked about how, like, I have to get beyond this fixed mindset or feeling stuck or being stuck, even socially,
Right.
because I'd rather protect myself. And introverts deal with that at times, right? Like, I don't want to go out and get to know because I've got to protect myself. So it seems like that part of whether it's the prefrontal cortex, whatever part of the brain, is really working more so than an extrovert who's just out here like a wild dog. I'm an extrovert. So anyway, shout out there.
So let's
But
say that
what I mean? Like, yeah.
so let's say you're an introvert, and you want to be an extrovert. You can't get there by arguing about, I want to be an extrovert,
Yeah.
because that survival part of the brain will always win. when you
Wow.
argue it when you argue with it, you're just making it stronger. And so the only thing that you can do is kind of divert it, and you divert it through possibly mindfulness, or possibly by asking, other questions, or tricking it somehow or other.
So this is great even for a work environment, for
Right.
people in, whether it's corporate America, whatever, and they're trying to work with difficult people, and they want to just leave the scene, but you can't just leave the scene. So, these are some great traits, right? To
Hmm.
to help them. Where would you recommend them start if they're like, I just feel like an oddball, or I just feel like this person, maybe they have a boss that doesn't really care too much for them, and it's just been rough. How do you help them to shift gears and to divert and all of that?
So, so first, you can't divert it until you're in control of your own mind. And so that's why this first book, Stop Your Brain from Sabotaging Your
Wow.
Happiness and
I need a
Success.
copy.
That's the your own brain part about it. The second book is going to be on conflict and collaboration, and that's actually one of the three
Wow.
courses. And so but to deal with conflict and collaboration, you first have to understand why you conflict and how you calm your own mind, and then you also have to understand the techniques of how do you work with somebody, and why are the things that we generally do with conflicts, why do they generally not work? Okay, so when we're conflicting with somebody and we're giving them reasons why one way is better than another way, those reasons and those facts would be appealing to their prefrontal cortex.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're in their survival part of their mind, their prefrontal cortex is shut off. And so they're just going to be able to react emotionally, and they're not. It's a human bias, and we all have this. We all do this.
Yes, we do.
We can't take in information that conflicts with what we emotionally feel, and so
Mm.
giving them facts is not going to resolve the issue. What could resolve the issue is, first of all, helping them quiet their own limbic reactions. Second of all, establishing some type of connection with them. And then third, collaborating to come up with something that's better than either one of you could have come up with. If you think that you're going to solve the issue by convincing them that your way is the right way, that will never work.
This is very interesting. As you're talking, I'm like, you need to be talking with like medical doctors on the brain.
Right.
And I think you should be talking with administrators on mediation techniques for
Right.
school.
Mm-hmm.
Because students that are fighting and they don't know how to calm their brain and everything makes them snap,
Mm-hmm.
this is a great tool, a resource or a course or whatever. This book would be great curriculum to help them to calm their brain,
Yep.
and then it with doctors dealing with trauma and stuff. Yeah.
There's an interesting. So I recently taught the conflict and collaboration course to a group of tutors in New York City. Right, it's an after-school program
Mm-hmm.
for underprivileged kids,
Mm-hmm.
and we had the example, like there was a child who had been in 3 fights recently. Okay, and so our normal reaction would be, you go to the child, say, "Why were you fighting?" Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and that immediately puts the child into a defensive mode. Okay, because they know you're just going to be trying to win something and get them to stop, and so they're thinking, I'm being threatened, and so that puts their survival or their limbic parts of the mind at full alert. And you may get some compliance because they're more afraid of the punishment, and that may work short term, but you're not going to long term address the issue because you haven't really engaged with them. And yet, if you have a different type of conversation with them, where somehow or other, and you know, I, I, I probably can't go through the whole conversation now,
Yeah.
but if you first could have a conversation with them where you're A, establishing the connection, and B, having them anticipate what the results are of when they react in a certain way, are those the results that they want? And so having them then start coming up with, well, what are some of the ways that I could be acting to get the results that I really do want? And so
Right.
you're walking with them rather than talking at them. And
I
so
love
that and so those are
that. Wow.
techniques in the conflict and collaboration course.
Wow. You said walking. I've got to write that out for them.
Walking
So,
with them rather than talking at them.
yeah. Because sometimes people need to see this for my visual people.
Yep.
Principals, listen. This is the goal of the year, and I think this is the gritty goal for 2025. Walking with our students rather than talking at them. And so, with that said, Mitch,
and something, it works with family members also.
Yeah.
You can't do that to family members either.
Yeah. And if you love someone, oh my God, this is so deep. if you love your family, you want to protect them, even in conversations. There's a saying, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. I can't stand people that always have something nasty to say about others,
Right.
like
Yep.
behind their back or whatever. Like, that it's like this nasty vibe, this nasty personality. They always got to get it. They always got to put a jab in. And it's like they're just miserable until they can tear somebody down with their words. And some of us out here, we blossom off of words of affirmation.
Yep.
And I think that, as you're walking with people instead of talking at them, you're mindful of that, because anything could cause anyone to snap. So I hope that, if maybe you might have a culture at your school or whatever where maybe you're focusing on trying to shift that culture so that people aren't having the nasty residue of this toxic gossip and mess. And every time they see someone new, it's something petty. Every time they, somebody does anything, somebody walked in the door, it's something petty. Somebody breathed, it's petty. Somebody, drove down the road, it's petty. It's just like, let's move past that. Let's shift our mindset, like you said here. So I think this is a beautiful source. Now, where can we find your book at, Mitch?
So the book is right now, the easiest place to buy the book is on Amazon. Okay. And it's just, stop your brain from sabotaging your happiness and success.
Beautiful.
And by the way, just Weisburgh, not E. If you were to look for my name on Amazon.
Oh my word.
That's okay. It's a weird spelling for Weisburgh. Burgh, right. My relatives evidently came over from Poland to England, and their last name was not Weisburgh. But when they got to England, they were told somebody just put down your last name is Weisburgh.
Oh wow!
And that became our last name.
It's all good. My last name's White. I wonder how that happened.
Right? Yeah.
Right. Hey, you're in good company. It's all good.
Right. That's all that matters, right?
Right. We're here. We're here. Right. So Mitch, listen, it has been fabulous speaking with you. You're definitely an expert in this field. I will continue this conversation. I've got to bring you back.
Thank you.
I have so many questions for you with this. I want to order a copy of this book. I'm hungry to know about it myself, because, we deal with principals and administrators that are dealing with trauma and stuff. They need this as well. So with that said, Mitch, can you share with us, how can we reach you for those that are wanting to reach you after the show?
Well, so certainly, LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn all the time. And then I write about mind shifting things on a newsletter, and you can access the newsletter at blog.mindshiftingeducators.org.
Okay. Excellent. So, Mitch, we're going to reach out to you on LinkedIn. And again, thank you for the article that you wrote about me.
Well, your life story is so inspiring, and what you do is so incredible, and people have to know about that. And I have to say, I got quite a few people who responded to that and says, "Wow, what a great story!" So the effect that you're having on people is incredible, and your calendar, your G.R.I.T calendar, is like it's such an incredible idea. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll make sure I'll send you the link and all that stuff, and I sent out that blog. I was so impressed by your work. So I'm looking forward to great work with you in the future as well, and I'm looking forward to reading your book on stop your brain from sabotaging your happiness and success. And thank you for being in the space, and we need you. We need your voice.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, definitely. So guys, thanks so much for joining us again on the G.R.I.T and Equity Talks podcast. I'm looking forward to connecting with you guys. Hopefully you guys can join me at the G.R.I.T conference. That's December 19th. Invite a friend, invite another woman with you. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time. That's 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That is the G.R.I.T, Getting Gritty for the New Year's conference. And the G.R.I.T calendar is going to be a hot hit there. So with that said, guys, till next time, stay gritty.
Till next time. Bye.
See ya.